Samantha stepped across the threshold of her in-laws' quiet suburban home, her boots silent against the polished hardwood floor. Underneath her oversized cream-colored sweater, her tired muscles still throbbed with the bone-deep exhaustion of 3 consecutive 48-hour shifts at the naval station. The harsh fluorescent lights of the military corridor melted into the warm, honeyed glow of the dining room. But the peaceful ambiance was instantly shattered by the booming voice of her arrogant brother-in-law, Ryan. Standing by the marble fireplace with a crystal glass of amber bourbon cradled in his palm, Ryan commanded the entire room like an actor desperate for a standing ovation. He was a lieutenant commander, a surface officer whose entire military career had been spent under the bright, forgiving sun of routine training exercises off the Virginia coast. Yet, as he gestured wildly with his glass, spilling droplets onto the expensive rug, he recounted a standard fleet drill as though he had single-handedly repelled an enemy fleet and saved the free world from imminent destruction. His chest swelled beneath his neatly pressed dress uniform shirt, his loud laughter ringing performative against the walls. Samantha quietly slipped past the foyer, carrying the heavy weight of real, unutterable shadows in her eyes, yet choosing to let the quiet room absorb her presence without demanding a single glance from anyone present tonight. She was thoroughly accustomed to this endless theater of grandiosity, having spent 14 long years watching men who accomplished very little shout the loudest, while those who bore the true burden walked in absolute, dignified silence. Taking her seat at the far end of the long mahogany table, Samantha folded her hands neatly over her cloth napkin. For 14 long years, her husband's family had comfortably categorized her as a dull, unimportant administrative clerk, a quiet woman who merely typed daily reports and filed paperwork inside a windowless basement office. They never questioned her quietness, assuming it stemmed from mediocrity rather than the profound weight of military operational secrecy. She did not correct them. Silence was not a burden she endured, but a solemn vow she honored. Beneath the dining table, a gentle warmth brushed against her cold fingers. David, her loving husband, reached out and gripped her hand with a steady, tender pressure that anchored her soul. His thumb traced soft circles across her knuckles, an unspoken sanctuary of complete understanding built over a decade of unconditional love. David did not know the classified coordinates she visited, nor the covert missions that kept her away for weeks in the dark, but he knew the steady rhythm of her heart. He understood that her quiet demeanor was not a sign of weakness, but the sturdy cloak of a resilient soul forged in fires he would never ask her to disclose. In his quiet embrace beneath the mahogany wood, Samantha found the strength to let the family's dismissive glares roll off her shoulders like rain. She smiled faintly at David, drawing deep solace from the one man who loved her not for her title or her secrets, but simply for the quiet purity of who she was. Ryan's booming voice suddenly faltered as his gaze swept across the table and landed sharply on Samantha. A condescending smirk curled the corner of his lips as he swirled the remaining bourbon in his glass, intentionally drawing the entire family's attention toward her quiet corner. "So, Samantha," Ryan began, his tone dripping with mock curiosity and theatrical condescension. "You've been in the Navy for 14 years now, haven't you? Tell us, does rubber stamping supply requisitions and filing routine memos all day ever get exhausting? I mean, some of us spend our lives steering warships through unpredictable ocean storms and facing real operational pressure. Well, you've probably never even smelled the faintest whiff of gunpowder or stepped foot on a true battlefront." A wave of collective chuckles rippled across the dining table as her mother-in-law patted Ryan's arm with proud indulgence. David's jaw clenched so hard a muscle twitched along his cheek, his knuckles turning stark white as he prepared to confront his brother's brazen disrespect. But before David could utter a single word, Samantha gently pressed her fingers into his knee, silently calming his rising anger. She looked up at Ryan, her clear, hazel eyes remaining as calm and untroubled as a deep, still mountain lake. There was no anger in her subtle expression, nor any desperate urge to defend her honor. Instead, she offered her brother-in-law a tranquil, patient smile, the soft, knowing gaze a mature adult gives a small child who is loudly boasting about building a massive kingdom out of toy wooden blocks on the living room floor. At the head of the table sat Master Chief Walt Reyes, a retired Navy SEAL veteran whose weathered face resembled a map of forgotten battlefields. Throughout the evening, Reyes had remained remarkably taciturn, his sharp, steel-gray eyes observing the room's dynamic with the quiet intensity of an old predator. He had ignored Ryan's grandiloquent stories about routine drills, but the moment Ryan flung his arrogant insult at Samantha, Reyes set his silver fork down with a deliberate, echoing clink. The old warrior's posture straightened, his keen gaze locking onto Samantha with an intense, penetrating scrutiny that seemed to see right through her simple sweater. He recognized the subtle posture of her shoulders, the watchful stillness in her eyes, and the impenetrable calm that only belonged to those who had walked through the dark valley of the shadow of death. A flicker of profound shock and emerging reverence crossed Reyes's rugged features as a memory from a classified briefing decades prior suddenly clicked into place. Ignoring Ryan entirely, the legendary Master Chief pushed back his heavy wooden chair and slowly walked toward the lower end of the dining table. The chatter around the room gradually died down into a confused, heavy stillness as everyone watched the highly decorated veteran halt right beside Samantha's chair. Leaning down slightly, his deep voice dropping to a low, gravelly whisper that carried an undeniable weight of solemn military respect, Reyes quietly asked, "Ma'am, by any chance, what was your official call sign during Operation Silent Shield in Virginia many long years ago?" The dining room fell into an absolute, suffocating hush, the air growing noticeably thick as every single family member stared in total bewilderment at the decorated Master Chief standing beside the quiet administrative worker. Samantha did not flinch, nor did her heartbeat alter its steady, rhythmic cadence. She slowly turned her head, meeting Reyes's searching, respectful gaze with an unwavering stillness that seemed to command the very atmosphere of the room. She allowed a brief, quiet pause to settle, letting the echoes of 14 years of silent service wash over her soul, before her lips parted to release a single, steady, whispered word that possessed the weight of an iron anchor. Sentinel. The moment the name echoed into the quiet air, Master Chief Reyes froze, as if struck by a bolt of lightning. The color drained from his weathered face, replaced instantly by an expression of transcendent awe and absolute, unadulterated reverence. Without a second's hesitation, the veteran warrior snapped his heels together and brought his right hand up to his brow, executing a crisp, flawless military salute that cut straight through the atmosphere of the mundane dining room like a sacred sword. Ryan sat paralyzed in his chair, his mouth hanging open in frozen shock, his arrogant demeanor dissolving into utter embarrassment as he realized he was looking at an authentic, living legend. Samantha softly nodded to Reyes, a gentle acknowledgement of shared sacrifice, marking the precise moment where loud, hollow pride shattered forever against the unbreakable, enduring wall of true, humble greatness and unyielding, silent dignity. Early the following morning, as soft, golden sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains of her quiet suburban kitchen, Samantha stood near the granite counter, holding a fresh, steaming mug of dark black coffee. The peaceful silence of the home was gently broken by the low vibration of her phone sliding across the marble surface. She answered calmly, her trained instincts instantly identifying the caller before he even spoke a word. On the other end of the line was Master Chief Walt Reyes, his usually stern, deeply commanding voice trembling slightly with an emotional intensity he could barely contain. The grizzled veteran explained that after returning home from the awkward family dinner, he had spent hours reviewing classified historical logs from his remaining high-level military contacts. He confirmed that he had officially verified her identity as the legendary operative behind Task Group 7. Reyes spoke with breathless awe as he recalled reading about the nearly impossible covert rescue missions she had personally commanded deep behind enemy lines. Operations that had saved hundreds of imperiled American lives without ever receiving public recognition. Hearing the old warrior's voice break as he acknowledged the immense physical and mental sacrifices she had endured in absolute secret brought a rare, quiet tear to Samantha's eyes. For 14 long years, she had carried the heavy burden of her hidden service in total isolation. But hearing Reyes validate her sacrifices with such profound reverence filled her heart with an overwhelming sense of relief, reminding her that true heroism never truly remains forgotten in the shadows of history. Master Chief Reyes paused on the line, allowing the sacred weight of their profound shared understanding to rest gently between them. His voice softened into a tone of quiet, genuine fatherly warmth as he expressed his deepest, most sincere respect for the unsung brotherhood of covert warriors who wore medals that could never be named, displayed, or celebrated in the bright, open light of day. He confessed how deeply pained he was by the way Ryan had treated her at the dinner table, recognizing the profound injustice of a decorated hero being belittled by someone who understood so little about true courage. As Samantha listened to his heartfelt words, a soothing wave of emotional healing washed over her weary, wounded soul, gently dissolving every single lingering sting of her family's cold, long-standing dismissal. For over a decade, being regarded as nothing more than a simple administrative clerk had forced her to live in a silent emotional exile, separated from the very people she loved and protected. Yet, in this brief, powerful phone call, a genuine fellow warrior had looked past the mundane cover story and recognized the true depth of her sacrifice. She realized then that she did not need the loud approval of the uninformed world to validate her worth. The quiet respect of one honorable soldier who understood the reality of her silent service was more than enough to heal the hidden wounds of her long isolation, reaffirming her inner peace and reassuring her gentle heart that her quiet dedication had always carried immense and eternal value. Meanwhile, across town, an agitated Ryan paced back and forth inside his spacious, brightly lit home office, his face twisted in a bitter mixture of humiliation and burning resentment. Unable to accept that a supposedly boring desk clerk had earned the sudden, intense reverence of a legendary SEAL veteran, Ryan refused to let his fragile ego suffer such a devastating, unbearable blow. He convinced himself that Master Chief Reyes was simply an aging, senile old man whose fading memory had confused a mundane administrative staffer with an actual, highly decorated combat hero. Driven by a bitter, malicious desire to protect his inflated reputation and expose Samantha to everyone as an imposter, Ryan decided to take matters into his own hands. He began spreading a widespread series of subtle, toxic rumors throughout the family, claiming that Samantha had manipulated a confused old veteran to make herself look uniquely important. Determined to publicly humiliate her and shatter her cover story once and for all, Ryan quietly leveraged his formal officer status and personal military network to initiate a completely unauthorized background check on Samantha's personnel records at the Pentagon. He spent hours reaching out to acquaintance contacts within naval administrative channels, aggressively demanding immediate, full access to her restricted personnel files and service history. He was entirely convinced that pulling up her actual records would reveal nothing more than mundane office assignments, giving him the exact evidence he desperately needed to tear down her dignity and restore his rightful position as the only true celebrated military officer within the prominent, proud Foster family. Sitting before his dual monitors late that night, Ryan typed Samantha's official service identification number into the restricted naval database portal, his eager fingers rapidly tapping the glowing keys with aggressive confidence. But the moment he hit the search button, the screen did not display her employment history or assignment records. Instead, both of his monitors suddenly flashed a blinding, crimson warning banner that illuminated his darkened office with a sinister red glow. Encased inside a thick black border were the bold, unforgiving words: access denied, clearance level, top secret. Before Ryan could even comprehend what he was looking at, an urgent, high-priority system alert immediately triggered across the terminal, completely freezing all of his keyboard inputs. Completely unbeknownst to Ryan, his unauthorized attempt to bypass security protocols and probe into the restricted files of Task Group 7 had immediately tripped an automated perimeter breach alarm inside the main central monitoring hub of the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Hundreds of miles away in Virginia, seasoned special agents assigned to high-level naval counterintelligence units watched as Ryan's officer credentials, IP address, and exact geographic location were instantly flagged for an immediate investigation. By willfully ignoring operational security guidelines out of personal spite, Ryan had unwittingly stepped into a deeply dangerous federal legal minefield. The automated security firewall stood like an impenetrable fortress, safely protecting Samantha's classified military legacy, while quietly ensnaring Ryan in a web of federal surveillance that would soon threaten to dismantle his arrogant military career and strip away his unearned pride forever. Frustrated by the impenetrable security wall and growing increasingly desperate to reclaim his superiority, Ryan devised a cold, bitterly calculated new scheme to publicly humiliate Samantha. If he could not expose her through official military channels, he would trap her completely on his own personal turf. He formally extended an invitation to Samantha and David for the upcoming Navy Heritage Gala, an exclusive high society military event attended by top-ranking military officers and distinguished high society dignitaries. Ryan smugly assumed that an unrefined administrative worker would feel completely overwhelmed and out of place in such an elegant, high-profile environment, inevitably leading to a humiliating public blunder that would expose her inadequacy before the entire naval elite. When David brought the invitation home, his eyes reflected deep concern for his wife, knowing his arrogant brother's toxic intentions all too well. However, Samantha merely looked at the gilded card and offered a serene, gentle, reassuring smile. She accepted the invitation without a single trace of hesitation or fear. To her, this glittering, glamorous gala was not a battlefield to prove her worth, but simply another evening to stand beside the devoted husband who loved her unconditionally. David squeezed her hand tightly, his unwavering faith in her serving as an unbreakable, comforting anchor of deep strength. Side by side, they calmly prepared to step together into the glittering, grand hall of high society, fully aware of the devious trap that Ryan had set, yet moving forward with the unshakable, quiet confidence that only belongs to those special souls who possess true inner greatness. The air was rich with the gentle hum of classical string quartets and the crisp rustle of snow-white naval dress uniforms adorned with gleaming brass buttons and colorful service ribbons. Ryan navigated through the affluent crowd with an inflated sense of pride, swirling his crystal champagne glass as he sought out influential contacts. He purposely pulled Samantha and David into prominent social circles, not to include them, but to use Samantha as a convenient backdrop to heighten his own importance. Whenever he introduced her to rising young junior officers, Ryan made a deliberate point of describing her role with theatrical pity. "This is my quiet, gentle sister-in-law, Samantha," he would say, with a patronizing chuckle. "She manages routine paperwork and administrative logistics inside a dark, windowless back office." He used her perceived obscurity as a convenient springboard to launch into grand tales of his own surface fleet operations, positioning himself as a heroic leader while reducing her to a mere background figure. Yet, Samantha walked through the magnificent hall with effortless grace, her fitted emerald gown contrasting softly against the vast sea of white uniforms. She felt no need to compete with Ryan's noisy vanity. Carrying the quiet dignity of a woman whose true accomplishments were deeply etched into the hidden history of silent military operations, she absorbed the opulent atmosphere with a serene, patient composure that far surpassed the hollow elegance displayed all around her tonight. Moments later, Ryan returned to Samantha's side, accompanied by several eager, impressionable young lieutenants who were attentively hanging on to his every word. Eager to stage another dramatic display of superiority, Ryan nudged one of the junior officers and gestured towards Samantha with an amused smirk. "Go on. Ask her about her grueling days in the Navy," Ryan scoffed lightly. "She can tell you all about the high-stakes pressure of filing supply requisitions and stamping tedious shipping manifests." The young officers let out polite, hesitant chuckles of agreement, echoing Ryan's mocking tone as they made light-hearted jokes about desk-bound sailors, far removed from the perils of the open sea. Rather than taking offense or offering a sharp rebuttal, Samantha merely smiled with gentle warmth, her hazel eyes radiating an unshakable, tranquil intelligence. She responded in a soft, measured cadence, speaking thoughtfully about the profound, vital importance of duty, unwavering organizational discipline, and steadfastly supporting the brave personnel serving on the dangerous front lines. Her gentle, soothing voice lacked even a trace of defensiveness, resentment, or anger. Instead, her calm presence commanded an intangible, subtle authority that immediately silenced the condescending, mocking tone of the entire group. The young lieutenants slowly stopped laughing, sensing a deep, formidable strength beneath her understated words. They began to look at her directly now, with an emerging sense of curiosity and instinctual, quiet respect, recognizing that the woman standing quietly before them possessed a mysterious, deeply commanding, noble demeanor that no ordinary administrative clerk could ever possibly fake or manufacture in her daily professional life. Suddenly, a profound, palpable shift moved through the vast, opulent ballroom, instantly cutting through the steady social chatter and polite laughter. The lively music of the string quartet gradually faded into silence as an undeniable aura of uncompromising, strict military authority swept across the room. At the grand entrance doors stood Rear Admiral Vance, the revered, highly decorated commander of the fleet, flanked closely by his senior staff aides. With his impressive broad shoulders, striking silver hair, and a chest covered in distinguished combat decorations, Admiral Vance personified the true, absolute pinnacle of naval leadership and sacrifice. His keen, disciplined intensity scanned the expansive hall, effortlessly commanding the undivided attention of every single person present in the room. Around the hall, officers of all ranks instantly adjusted their posture, immediately standing at attention with rigid military discipline, while conversation died down into a reverent, quiet, breathless hush. Ryan hastily straightened his formal jacket and smoothed his tie, eagerly positioning himself prominently near the main aisle. eagerly prepared to deliver a polished, warm, sycophantic greeting, desperate to catch the eye of the legendary admiral and earn a moment of valuable, high-level recognition before his peers. Before he could even utter a word, unsolicited greetings invaded from all directions. Alex was outnumbered. The entire atmosphere of the gala seemed to completely freeze, suspended in a tense, expectant pause as the most powerful man in the room prepared to make his grand entrance. His formidable presence naturally drawing the deep admiration, quiet awe, and unwavering respect of every single distinguished guest gathered inside the hall tonight. Bypassing the formal receiving line of senior captains and distinguished high-ranking commanders who stood waiting to greet him with rehearsed smiles, Rear Admiral Vance stepped onto the grand main floor. He did not halt to engage in polite pleasantries with the eager, waiting circle of officers surrounding the entrance. Instead, with a sharp, purposeful military stride, the Admiral carved a direct path through the crowded, glittering ballroom, walking with a sharp, unwavering focus toward the far, quiet corner of the hall. Ryan's chest swelled with delusional, overwhelming pride as he realized the commander was heading directly in his direction. He quickly stepped forward, raising his hand to offer a crisp salute and a polite, welcoming greeting, convinced that his recent performance reports had finally earned him personal recognition from the highest top tier of naval leadership. But Admiral Vance did not even glance once toward Ryan. Without breaking his stride, the Admiral brushed right past Ryan's outstretched hand, leaving the young officer standing completely frozen in mid-gesture. The room watched in absolute astonishment as the legendary, austere commander halted directly in front of Samantha. Ryan's eyes widened in sheer disbelief, his champagne glass wavering dangerously and precariously in his hand, as his triumphant, smug smile collapsed into total confusion. The entire hall grew utterly still as the highest-ranking military officer in the room stood before the quiet woman Ryan had spent the entire evening mocking and belittling, creating a stunning, unforgettable visual contrast that shattered every shallow, false assumption in the crowded room that unforgettable evening. Rear Admiral Vance came to a rigid, solemn halt, his stern face softening remarkably into an expression of profound, unadulterated, heartfelt respect. He snapped his heels together and offered a formal, incredibly crisp salute, his booming, powerful voice echoing clearly across the completely silent room. "Commander Samantha Foster," the Admiral announced with deep, resonant emotion. "It is an absolute honor to see you again, Commander Sentinel." The title reverberated through the entire hall, sending a sudden shockwave of total realization through the gathered, attentive crowd. Turning slightly to address the 200 thoroughly stunned guests, Admiral Vance spoke with profound, commanding gravity. "Many of you in this room wear ribbons for visible, celebrated battles," he stated. "But this extraordinary woman standing here has spent 14 years operating in the deep, dangerous shadows, courageously planning and executing critical covert operations that saved the lives of hundreds of our American troops on hostile foreign shores. A collective, audible gasp rippled through the audience as junior officers all stood in stunned awe, realizing they were in the presence of a legendary military operative of the highest order. Ryan stood frozen like a pale stone statue, the color completely drained from his face as his arrogant, fragile world shattered into pieces. Beside Samantha, David squeezed her hand with quiet pride, his eyes shining with profound love. Samantha offered the Admiral a humble, deeply gracious nod. Her silent service finally bathed in the warm, undeniable light of eternal truth and honor tonight, as the entire room erupted in thunderous, roaring applause. In the heavy, restless days following the Navy Heritage Gala, Ryan sank into a dark, suffocating state of relentless insomnia. Every time he closed his eyes, in the quiet darkness of his bedroom, the haunting image of Rear Admiral Vance, bowing his head in profound, solemn, heartfelt respect before Samantha, continuously replayed behind his eyelids like an inescapable nightmare. The loud, proud foundation upon which Ryan had built his entire identity, his unearned arrogance, his loud, theatrical tales of routine fleet drills, and his condescending superiority, had completely shattered into meaningless dust before his very eyes that evening. Yet, rather than accepting this painful reality with humble introspection, his inflated ego reacted with a toxic, obsessive wave of burning jealousy. The overwhelming realization that the quiet woman he had belittled for 14 years was an authentic, highly decorated military hero felt like an unbearable, intolerable humiliation that devoured his sanity from within. His mind scrambled desperately to find a way to rewrite the narrative, convincing himself that there had to be a catastrophic misunderstanding or an elaborate deception at play. Driven by a desperate, toxic need to restore his fallen pride and prove that he was still the superior officer in the family, Ryan allowed his blinding envy to completely cloud his judgment. He refused to accept his defeat, allowing his bitter resentment to push him toward a dangerous, irrational path of reckless, foolish actions from which there would be no turning back. Entirely blind to the catastrophic, life-altering consequences waiting just ahead of him. Blinded by his desperate obsession to destroy Samantha's pristine military reputation, Ryan committed a fatal, reckless error that would forever alter the course of his military career. Sitting completely alone deep inside his quiet home office late at night, he drafted an official, formal letter of complaint and submitted it directly to the highest levels of Naval High Command. In the bitter document, Ryan recklessly accused Commander Samantha Foster of orchestrating a fraudulent military record, claiming she had manipulated senior officers and exploited sensitive, classified channels to steal unearned military influence and social glory. He demanded a full, formal investigation into her service history. foolishly believing that his position as a commissioned surface fleet officer would lend considerable credibility to his wild, malicious accusations. However, Ryan failed to understand the severe, uncompromising reality of strict military law and formal operational security guidelines. By explicitly naming classified operation designations like Task Group 7 and actively attempting to force a public inquiry into highly restricted intelligence files, Ryan had committed a catastrophic, illegal breach of federal security protocols and military regulations. The High Command did not initiate an investigation into Samantha. Instead, his reckless, unfounded formal complaint immediately triggered an urgent red alert within the entire military intelligence apparatus. Within mere hours of his rash submission, the formal complaint was routed directly to the Special Counterintelligence Division of the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Ryan's arrogant attempt to sabotage his sister-in-law had instantly transformed him from a promising young officer into a primary subject of a serious, high-priority federal security investigation that directly threatened his freedom and career. Early the next morning, 2 stern-faced federal agents in dark suits appeared at Ryan's command post, personally delivering a mandatory summons for a high-priority briefing. Ryan was escorted into a security interrogation room deep inside the local NCIS field office, where a stern senior security officer sat waiting behind a bare, cold metal desk. Before Ryan could even open his mouth to offer a polished, rehearsed explanation, the lead agent slammed a heavy, top-secret classified dossier onto the table, its dark cover stamped with bold crimson warnings. The officer's cold, steel-gray eyes locked onto Ryan with uncompromising, icy severity as he systematically laid out the overwhelming evidence of Ryan's security violations, from his unauthorized Pentagon database breach to his reckless formal complaint. The room felt suffocatingly small and quiet as the agent delivered a severe warning that shattered Ryan's remaining arrogance completely to pieces. Lieutenant Commander Foster, the agent stated in a razor-sharp, icy tone that cut through the quiet room like shattered glass. If you make even one more unauthorized attempt to probe into the classified personnel files of Commander Samantha Foster or utter her official call sign aloud in public ever again, you will be immediately stripped of your commission, arrested for treason, and prosecuted before a general court-martial. The sheer weight of the threat hit a stunned Ryan like a physical blow, leaving him trembling in absolute, paralyzing terror as the terrifying reality of his complete powerlessness crashed down upon his shattered, deeply fragile ego. While Ryan wrestled with the terrifying aftermath of his tense interrogation, word of the extraordinary, dramatic revelation at the gala slowly filtered through the entire inner circle of the prominent Foster family. The quiet atmosphere inside his parents' home underwent a profound, palpable transformation as the long-held misconceptions about Samantha completely dissolved forever into the bright, clear light of truth. His parents now looked at Samantha with a complex and painful mix of deep, sincere, solemn respect and profound, lingering personal embarrassment, painfully aware of how carelessly they had dismissed her for 14 long, quiet years, while indulging Ryan's loud, hollow, empty boasts. They felt profoundly ashamed of having treated a genuine national hero like an insignificant administrative clerk. However, rather than harboring any bitterness, using her newfound, earned military prestige to lord over them, or demanding any formal apology for their past dismissals, Samantha remained the exact same gentle, loving, compassionate soul she had always been. She continued to visit them regularly with warm affection, bringing homemade treats and offering helpful, comforting hands with grace, warmth, and genuine filial respect. Her peaceful, humble demeanor and unwavering, quiet humility served as a powerful, healing, transformative force that gradually washed away all of their guilt and awkwardness. The family members quickly realized that Samantha's true greatness lay not merely in her classified, heroic military achievements or her formidable, quiet authority, but in the extraordinary, genuine kindness, patience, and unshakable quiet strength of her character, forever earning their deepest admiration and heartfelt gratitude with every passing day. Despite the terrifying official warning from NCIS and the rapidly crumbling support of his family, Ryan remained trapped in a state of desperate, highly chaotic panic, unable to fully surrender his wounded pride. Driven by a desperate need to save face before his military peers, he threw himself into organizing his upcoming formal engagement party at the prestigious Officers Club, a grand event designed to showcase his prominent, high-standing social connections. A desperate Ryan convinced his fragile ego that this evening represented his absolute final, golden opportunity to regain control of the narrative and restore his diminished dominance within the prominent family. He crafted a reckless, highly manipulative scheme, intending to use the celebratory atmosphere and the presence of distinguished military guests to publicly pressure and ambush Samantha by forcing her into revealing specific details about her classified covert assignments, hoping to expose her claims to everyone as a mere exaggeration. He foolishly believed that by putting her on the spot, in front of a room full of distinguished, high-ranking officers, he could force her to admit her own limitations, or make her appear evasive, dishonest, and defensive before everyone present in the hall. Completely oblivious to the fact that his actions were actively being closely monitored by alert federal security agents, and entirely blind to the catastrophic consequences of his persistent, toxic arrogance, Ryan meticulously prepared his elaborate, foolish trap, remaining totally unaware that he was digging a deep, inescapable grave that would permanently bury his promising military career. The grand dining hall of the prestigious Officers Club buzzed with an opulent energy, beautifully adorned with elegant floral arrangements, shimmering crystal stemware, and floating silk banners decorated for Ryan's grand formal engagement celebration. High-ranking military figures, local dignitaries, and the prominent family of his new fiancée filled the velvet-lined booths, creating an atmosphere of refined high society, distinction, and celebration. Ryan moved through the room with a crystal glass of expensive aged scotch perpetually resting in his hand, his eyes burning with a volatile mix of liquid courage and reckless desperation. As the evening progressed and the heavy alcohol loosened his remaining inhibitions, his bitter gaze repeatedly locked onto Samantha, who sat quietly beside David near the center of the hall. Until Samantha wore a simple, elegant navy dress, her posture relaxed and completely unbothered by the glamorous display surrounding her. David sat close to her, his strong hand resting reassuringly over hers, offering a completely impenetrable shield of quiet, unwavering, unconditional devotion. To Ryan's fractured ego, Samantha's calm demeanor was an unbearable provocation, a silent, painful reminder of his own hollow standing and the terrifying NCIS interrogation he had endured in complete secret. Unable to stomach the thought of fading into the background while she radiated an effortless aura of unspoken dignity, Ryan decided that the crucial, long-awaited moment had finally arrived to execute his final, desperate gamble. He walked toward the central podium, taking deep, steady breaths to fuel his misguided conviction, fully determined to force Samantha into a public confrontation from which she could never escape tonight. Reaching the raised stage, Ryan tapped his heavy, polished gold ring against the metallic microphone, sending a sharp, echoing feedback whine throughout the grand hall that instantly silenced the chatter of every single guest in attendance. With a booming, performative chuckle that dripped with obvious, bitter malice, he adjusted his uniform jacket and eagerly surveyed the wide sea of expectant faces, before directly singling out Samantha with a dramatic, accusing gesture. "Good evening, distinguished officers, honored guests, and dearly beloved family." Ryan began, his loud voice echoing clearly off the high vaulted ceilings of the hall. "Tonight, as we celebrate love and service, I want to take a special moment to honor my quiet, gentle sister-in-law, Samantha, who has served 14 years inside our nation's respected Navy." He paused, a sneering smirk spreading across his face as he locked eyes with her across the quiet, crowded room. "We all know she works in routine administrative logistics, but lately, strange, persistent rumors have circulated that she is somehow a covert combat hero, hiding behind classified shadows. So I ask you tonight, Samantha, with senior commanders and generals gathered here present in this very room, do you finally have the courage to tell us what you actually did to serve this country? Or will you continue to hide cowardly behind the convenient, completely fake label of top secret to pretend that you are something you're truly not? The room fell into an uncomfortable, suffocating, awkward hush as guests exchanged shocking, brazen, bewildered glances at his unprecedented disrespect toward a family member. An uncomfortable, tense silence gripped the entire banquet hall, the entire atmosphere turning thick as every eye shifted toward the small, central dining table where Samantha sat completely peacefully. Rather than flinching, blushing, or showing the slightest hint of panic under the intense, heavy public gaze, Samantha calmly set her silver fork down onto her fine white porcelain plate with a quiet, crisp, deliberate click. She raised her head, looking directly up at Ryan on the elevated wooden stage, with hazel eyes that contained no trace whatsoever of anger, defensiveness, or embarrassment. Instead, her calm gaze, reflected a profound, deeply sorrowful pity. The gentle, compassionate look that a mother gives to a deeply troubled soul who is foolishly and actively destroying himself out of sheer insecurity. Beside her, David's hand gripped hers tightly, his steadfast presence giving her a solid, unwavering, deeply comforting foundation of unconditional love. Samantha took a slow, steady, deep breath, her voice carrying a natural, resonant clarity that effortlessly reached every corner of the vast, silent hall without needing a microphone. "Ryan," she spoke very softly, her measured words cutting through the heavy tension with undeniable quiet grace and immense moral weight. A true soldier's sacred duty is to serve the nation, protect innocent lives, and uphold honor silently in the dark. Never to turn sacred sacrifice into cheap, noisy, boastful stories to entertain a festive party crowd. Her dignified, quiet response hung in the air like a timeless, undeniable truth, instantly exposing Ryan's theatrical outburst as a hollow, tragic, deeply pathetic display of burning insecurity. Before Ryan could utter another desperate word to regain control of his failing spectacle, the heavy double doors at the front of the hall swung open, and Rear Admiral Vance strode purposefully onto the main stage of the ballroom. The venerable, highly decorated commander did not wait for an official introduction. He stepped directly up to the central speaker podium, his towering, imposing presence and stern, thunderous expression instantly commanding absolute obedience from every single person gathered inside the room. He reached out and forcefully adjusted the metallic microphone, his piercing gaze locking onto Ryan with an icy, sharp, unforgiving severity that made the younger officer instantly shrink back in absolute paralyzing terror. "I do not know who taught this young lieutenant commander that it is acceptable to publicly insult and disrespect a superior officer," Admiral Vance announced, his booming, majestic voice vibrating with righteous indignation across the motionless, silent crowd. "The remarkable woman whom you have so insolently insulted tonight is Commander Samantha Foster, the legendary operative officially known as Sentinel. She is the brilliant tactical mind who personally planned and executed covert rescue operations that saved the precious lives of hundreds of your own fellow servicemen from certain death deep behind hostile lines. Operations requiring a level of extraordinary personal courage, intellect, and selfless sacrifice that a man like you, sir, is not even remotely qualified to comprehend, let alone judge in public." The Admiral's scathing, powerful words shattered Ryan's illusion entirely, exposing the unbridgeable gulf between loud, artificial vanity and true, authentic, heroic, quiet sacrifice. As Rear Admiral Vance finished his powerful, solemn decree, a profound, breathless pause held the room before the entire hall erupted into a deafening, majestic standing ovation. Senior officers, decorated generals, and distinguished guests all stood as one, their hands clapping rhythmically in deep, sincere, heartfelt tribute to the quiet woman who had given 14 years of silent, brave service to her beloved country. The thunderous applause rolled through the banquet hall like a majestic, roaring wave, fully bathing Samantha in the long overdue, warm light of public gratitude, profound honor, and deep military respect. On the stage, a stunned Ryan stood completely frozen, drained of every drop of color, looking utterly hollow and broken as his grand ambush backfired so catastrophically tonight, permanently dismantling his entire military career and elevated social standing. He slowly slumped backward against the polished wooden podium, completely crushed beneath the heavy weight of his own foolish pride and crushing public disgrace. Amidst the roaring, thunderous ovation, David wrapped his strong arm tightly around Samantha's shoulders, pressing a tender, loving kiss to her temple as quiet tears of joy and relief shimmered brightly in his loving eyes. Samantha smiled softly and gently, holding her devoted husband's hand with deep, radiating warmth, her heart filled with profound, unshakable peace. Truth had finally prevailed over petty deception, and in that shining, unforgettable moment of total triumph, Samantha knew that her long journey through the cold shadows of silent duty had finally led her home to ultimate, eternal justice, honor, and unconditional love. 2 weeks after the catastrophic fallout at the Officers' Club, a quiet rain fell over the suburban neighborhood, softening the sharp edges of the late autumn afternoon. Samantha was standing near the front window when she noticed a figure walking slowly up the suburban driveway. It was Ryan, but he looked completely unrecognizable from the arrogant officer who had once commanded every room with loud, obnoxious boastfulness. His shoulders were slouched, his hair disheveled, and the hollow exhaustion etched into his pale face made him appear strangely small and fragile. When Samantha opened the front door, Ryan stood on the porch in silence for a long moment, staring down at his wet leather shoes, completely unable to meet her eyes. When he finally looked up, tears welled in his eyes as he choked back a heavy, painful sob. "Samantha," he whispered, his voice trembling with genuine, deep remorse. "I came here today to tell you how deeply sorry I am for everything I did." The arrogant bravado was entirely gone, replaced by a painful, raw honesty. He confessed that his toxic behavior throughout the years had been driven by a bitter, disease-like jealousy and a crippling fear of inadequacy. He admitted that he had relentlessly tried to belittle her service simply to mask his own deep-seated insecurities, foolishly hoping that lowering her stature would somehow elevate his own. Looking at him standing broken outside in the cold rain, Samantha saw not a bitter enemy, but a deeply wounded soul who had finally faced the painful truth of his own actions. Samantha did not offer a harsh rebuke, nor did she allow a single drop of bitterness to taint her spirit. Instead, she stepped back and invited Ryan inside, offering him a warm cup of hot coffee as they both sat quietly together near the warm fireplace, looking at her deeply humbled brother-in-law with hazel eyes filled with profound grace and understanding. She offered him a gentle, forgiving, deeply understanding smile. "Ryan," she spoke very softly, her voice carrying the soothing warmth of true emotional healing. "Forgiveness is not about erasing the past, but about choosing not to let past pain poison or ruin our future." She paused, letting her gentle, comforting words settle softly between them, before sharing a profound life lesson forged through 14 years of silent, dedicated military sacrifice. "Real respect in this world," she explained to him calmly, "is never demanded through loud boasts or flashy titles. It is not about how loudly you tell people about your achievements, but about the quiet, unyielding pride you carry in your heart after you have faithfully fulfilled your sacred duty." Ryan listened very intently, tears streaming steadily down his face as her profound wisdom shattered the last remaining remnants of his artificial, fragile pride. For the first time in his entire adult life, he understood the true nature of true honor. Samantha's compassionate response transformed what could have been a moment of bitter defeat into a sacred, transformative turning point of personal and moral redemption, teaching him that authentic strength lies in gentle, quiet humility rather than loud, empty grandiosity. A few weeks later, the atmosphere inside the spacious Foster family home was completely transformed, filled with a genuine warmth and harmony that had never existed before. During a cozy Sunday afternoon family dinner, warm, cheerful conversation flowed effortlessly across the mahogany table. The cold arrogance and subtle dismissals of the past were replaced by an enduring, beautiful spirit of mutual respect and deep, heartfelt gratitude. As dessert was served, David's father cleared his throat loudly and stood up at the head of the long table, his eyes shining with deep, visible emotion as he held a small black velvet box in his shaking, trembling hands. The room fell into a quiet, respectful hush as the family patriarch turned to Samantha. "For 14 years, he began, his voice thick with heartfelt emotion, "we mistakenly judged you by the quiet simplicity of your cover, completely blind to the heroic burdens you carried for our country. You have brought immeasurable honor, grace, and healing to our entire family." With reverent, steady hands, he opened the box to reveal an antique heirloom diamond ring that had been passed down through 4 generations of the Foster family, reserved exclusively for the most deserving matriarchal figure of the clan. He gently slipped the ring onto Samantha's trembling finger, officially recognizing her as the true, heroic heart and soul of the family. Samantha accepted the heirloom with deep, humble grace, her heart swelling with warmth as the entire family lovingly embraced her in complete, unconditional love, deep respect, and family acceptance. Sitting beside her at the crowded dinner table, Samantha softly turned her gaze toward David, her heart overflowing with a profound, quiet gratitude for the extraordinary, loving man beside her. Throughout 14 long, quiet years of marriage, David had never once demanded that she violate her sacred military oath or reveal the top-secret secrets she kept safely locked inside her heart. He had never felt threatened by her hidden military authority or questioned her long operational absences. Instead, he had chosen to love her completely and unconditionally, serving as an unshakable pillar of strength, comfort, and protection in her life. Looking into his kind, tender eyes, Samantha realized that authentic, true love was not built upon loud public displays, empty grand declarations, or shallow mutual ambition, but upon absolute trust, deep, quiet respect, and the courage to stand firmly beside someone through life's heaviest, darkest, most turbulent storms. They shared a silent, deeply knowing look, a beautiful, unspoken language of the heart that required no spoken words. In that sweet, tender moment, surrounded by the warm laughter of a healed and united family, Samantha understood the true definition of family. It was not merely tied by blood or shared family names, but bound by the conscious, deliberate choice to cherish, respect, and heal one another without judgment. David reached under the table and squeezed her warm hand softly, his warm grasp reassuring her that no matter what dark, unpredictable, unknown shadows the future might bring, they would face them together as an unbreakable, deeply devoted team. As the warm, golden evening sun began to set, casting long, radiant rays of amber light through the living room window frame, Samantha sat comfortably on the cozy window seat, leaning her head softly against David's strong, steady shoulder. Outside, the soft, gentle autumn breeze rustled through the crimson and gold leaves, creating a soothing, peaceful melody that filled the quiet, warm, sunlit home. The heavy physical burdens of her long, silent service, the painful years of being misunderstood, and the chaotic turmoil of the recent traumatic weeks had all melted away into the serene atmosphere of total, unshakable inner peace. Samantha held her devoted husband's hand tightly, feeling the steady, comforting rhythm of his breathing beside her, while the family heirloom ring on her finger caught the fading golden light of the radiant autumn sunset. She looked peacefully out at the quiet horizon with a serene, contented smile, reflecting on the long, difficult, silent journey that had brought her to this sacred moment of complete emotional and spiritual restoration. Her life was a living, timeless testament to a profound, sacred truth that would inspire generations to come, that those who possess true, greatest strength in this world are not those who shout the loudest to be heard, but those who know how to carry their immense power with gentle humility, quiet dignity, and pure, unconditional, boundless love. Wrapped in the warm, healing embrace of her united family, Samantha gently closed her eyes, breathing in the quiet, sacred beauty of a bright, hopeful new beginning.